It's Monday, and a new week in crypto is getting underway. Here with all the top stories to get you up to speed, it's the Coin Bureau News. Market-moving macro. As the Fed's interest rate decision draws near, speculation mounts that a larger than expected rate cut could be on the cards. Risk on versus risk off. Bitcoin decouples from gold as investors reevaluate their risk tolerances. Is this good or bad for BTC? Debate feeding frenzy. Crypto fails to get a look in as the two US presidential candidates go head-to-head, but the election result could be good for the industry either way. Donald does DeFi. Fresh from another attempt on his life, Donald Trump is set to launch World Liberty Financial today. What's it all about? That's a wrap. Coinbase releases CB-BTC, a new wrapped Bitcoin product that could unleash a flood of liquidity into DeFi. Why are some big names in crypto not happy? And a look at last week's top performing cryptos, some dates for your diary, tweets of the week, and more besides. This is the Coin Bureau News, live. Welcome everyone to another edition of the Coin Bureau News Live. We are coming to you from our news bunker here in Dubai. My name is Guy and I am joined as ever by Nick.
GM Crypto Firm. Happy Monday, Guy. I love the color coordination going on here and our name tags.
Yes, yeah, we've got Coin Bureau name tags just in case you forget which channel you're watching.
Exactly.
And we've managed to coordinate basically roughly similar shades of grey.
We just woke up this morning and great.
Just on a different level. So thank you everyone for joining us. We are going to be going through some of the big events in crypto from last week, looking ahead to some of the stuff that's coming up this week. It is going to be an exciting one this week.
Very exciting one. Token 2049, the pivot party, a lot to look forward to.
Yeah. So Nick, do you want to kick us off with our first story of the week?
Yeah. So basically what happened last week, and this is a good way to tee up what's going to potentially happen this week, because as I just mentioned, the pivot party, Wednesday, we are going to have the long-awaited pivot. The torture of waiting and wondering what we're going to see will finally come to an end. And so last week, as we mentioned last week in the prior news, what was coming up in terms of on Wednesday, we had the CPI data coming out. Now, CPI was trending lower, which is good. However, there was a slight uptick in the core CPI metric, right? So we have a chart here with a slight uptick in the core CPI, and you'll see that it's picked up a little bit. And that was as a result of housing, right, or shelter costs. And it's quite interesting, I was mentioning this earlier, but that component is the owner equivalent rent of the CPI measure, which is basically a manufactured component because it's not actually what people pay to rent, but what owners will say that it could cost them to rent, or this is like a metric. So
that sounds deeply unreliable.
It's very unreliable, but this is the CPI measure. Many people would say that the CPI measure itself is kind of like flawed in any way. So that came in slightly higher. So then people thought, hey, okay, well, this could mean that the Fed is probably going to be less likely to cut a lot. So then the probability of a 25 basis point cut was about 75% in terms of the Fed rate futures after that. However, so that was on Wednesday.
Right.
Okay, so they expecting potentially 25 basis point cut. However, late Thursday, Nicky Leaks, the Fed whisperer.
The guy, in Nick Timmerhouse.
Exactly, the Wall Street Journal reporter. So this guy's called Nicky Leaks. He has a potential ear into the Fed. They kind of like leak him information. And he said that even at the Fed, there is no consensus on what the rate cut will be.
Wow.
So they are, even between themselves, they don't really know.
Okay.
And there's a lot of debate on, are we seeing a slowing in the economic growth? Are we worried about potentially heading to a recession? If we are targeting a certain terminal rate at the end of the year, should we front load that? And there's all this discussion going on within the Fed. So right after that report came out, the Fed probability rates jumped to 50-50, I think, between 50 bips and 25 bips. And this was like this over the weekend. However, today I checked in on the probability charts and it was at 60% of a 50 basis point cut.
Wow. Okay.
So this is a chart. I'll just show you this chart we got on the screen now. This is basically from this Wall Street Journal article from the wiki Nicky Leaks reporter, and you'll see that this is previous rate loosening cycles in previous times and where the key macro data has been. And you'll notice that they're all about much aligned, although the inflation is still quite high. So that's potentially a reason why the Fed may want to not dive into the 50 basis point cut right now. But the market is saying we want 50 basis points.
Yeah.
We want 50 basis points. We think it's time. We think that rather front load this stuff. The markets are pricing in about 120 basis points in terms of like by the end of the year, which would mean that you'd have to do a 50 basis point cut in one of the 3 remaining Fed.
That's right. Yeah.
so
There are only
there's
3 meetings left.
There's
aren't
only
there?
3
Yeah.
meetings left. So let's rather front load that. So yeah, that's what it's currently looking like. It seems like the market is wanting 50 basis points. Now, it's question is what's going to happen to the markets if they give 50 basis points. The one angle is, okay, we're getting what we want. We'll, rally.
Yeah.
The other is, oh my God, the Fed is cutting by 50 basis points. Must we worry?
Yeah. There is that concern that it
Yeah.
could be taken as a sort of panic measure. Yeah.
Yeah. And there's also an interesting chart from Steno Research. Now, Bitcoin it's a new asset in the scheme of like the long Fed history, right?
Yeah.
But there's been only one time before where the Fed has cut rates and gone into a rate cutting cycle when Bitcoin and Ethereum were assets, right? And this was back in 2019. And you'll see in this chart from Steno Research that right after the pivot started and the rate cutting began, both Bitcoin and Ethereum fell. And it wasn't until at least when they hit zero in terms of the Fed funds rate that they started to rally out of the pandemic. Okay, it's one data point. You can't really base conclusions on it, but it is a data point of some description.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Okay, so that's fascinating. So we've gone from what looked, it seemed like 25 basis points was kind of nailed on last week. It seemed like the path of least resistance, and it seemed like, the easiest way for the Fed to go. And now, there was a quote from one of the Fed governors, from the Kansas City Fed, Esther George, said, you can make a very good case for 50.
They can, yeah. Like I said, it's like, do they want to front load it? And you could also, a situation like the question around, is this going to spook the market? A lot of it is forward guidance as well.
Yeah.
So the Fed comes out, says we'll do 50 basis point cut. But by the way, we're doing this now. We're front loading. We're targeting these potential rates towards the end of the year, the terminal rate. And then also one point, guys, they're going to be releasing important economic data as well. The summary of economic projections.
Yes.
And the dot plot. The dot plot is the combination of all of the Fed's governors' projections for interest rates at the end of the year. So that's coming out as well. So that will allow for some forward guidance. So, yeah, it's really, really, it's on the edge.
It's going to come down. It's going to come down to that meeting. It sounds like they've got a lot to discuss.
Set your timers, guys. Get ready for the. Are you gonna have a Fed watch party? I
always do. So my famous Fed watch party.
All people around, like the NVIDIA watch parties.
Yeah, fire up the barbecue. Yeah. So this is obviously a really pivotal decision. It seems like the Fed, it could really go either way, but it's certainly leaning towards 50 now.
It's leaning. Well, it's like. We don't really know because this is just all rumors from within the Fed.
Mm-hmm.
It seems the market wants that.
Yeah.
And as I'll point out also, there was no economic data that came out after the inflation numbers. So they're basing it on what this leak was, apparently.
Yeah.
And, interest rate futures are also very volatile.
Yeah. And of course, inflation has really declined. It's still slightly above that 2% target, but certainly a lot of what Jerome has said recently at Jackson Hole and elsewhere has pointed more to the fact that they're worried about employment now. That seems to have been a bit more of an issue.
Exactly.
Of late.
More dovish tone, worried about employment. What is the quote? It's like, we do not seek additional softening in the labor market.
Yeah.
And there are slight concerns about it, but yeah. So, yeah.
Okay. So that's the big one. This Wednesday is the Fed meeting. The Fed meeting, that crucial interest rate decision, and also, as Nick said, the SEP, the summary of economic projections, which is arguably perhaps more important, as that's going to kind of give us the roadmap, the Fed's roadmap for thinking for the rest of the year.
Exactly.
Okay. So, we don't know. Well, we don't know for sure what that rate cut is going to be, even if it is leaning towards 50 now. We don't know for sure what effect it's going to have on the market, but I imagine there's going to be a fair bit of volatility around that time.
There will be, prior to that for sure. I think that if he comes in at 25, look, the market's expectations are, at least at this point, we want 50. So if it's 25, I think the markets will sell off.
Yeah. Just a few basis points, enough to tip some people into capitulation.
Yeah.
Fine lines, fine margins. Okay, let's move on then. The next story we're going to talk about today is we're also sticking with Bitcoin. Now, this is the fact that Bitcoin and gold are decoupling. You can see this CoinDesk article here, pointing out that they've been pretty well correlated for a while now.
Yeah, up to the point. I think they were quoting a crypto quant report or like data. So you'll see there's an image from this article we'll pull up, guys. And yeah, that's the historical correlation mapped as well with the price of Bitcoin and gold, right?
Yeah,
you can see that recently it's diverged and the correlation's gone negative.
So what does this mean then? Bitcoin is becoming more of a risk asset than previously.
It seems like it. It seems like the whole notion of Bitcoin, which is, prior to this, was it's a risk. It's a hedge against uncertainty. It's a hedge against inflation. It's it's akin to a digital gold. All this narrative was sold, and now it appears as if it's just not. It's not performing like that. It's becoming more and more of a risk asset, a risk-on asset. It's correlation with. So the decoupling that we were hoping for with equities, which we've always been talking about, is now decoupled against gold. And you can even see we've got a chart here from TradingView, guys. So that's the price of gold in terms of Bitcoin.
Right.
So gold has rallied by, I think, about 42% over since March.
The stuff of Peter Schiff's dreams.
Peter Schiff's dreams. Peter Schiff is looking at this chart. He's put it on his wall. He gets dressed in a nice silk shirt and looks at this chart. It's like, gold is performing. I love gold.
He's going full on gold member.
Full on gold.
No doubt he will. No doubt he will wade in and have another debate with someone in the crypto sphere about gold versus Bitcoin again. Okay, so Bitcoin arguably becoming more of a risk asset now. I suppose this kind of highlights the fact that us in our crypto bubble, we tend to look at the likes of MicroStrategy. We tend to look at certainly a large majority of people in crypto, their portfolios are very top heavy Bitcoin. And we kind of have this sense that, Bitcoin has become the cornerstone of so many people's investments. And actually, in the world outside of the crypto bubble, that is not true. And that is not really going to be true either. Like Bitcoin is always going to be a small part, a small hedge in the vast majority of portfolios.
Yeah, exactly. That's the case. And that's what it's been sold as, right? It's been sold as a risk to diversify your risk. And if you think about, for those of you who follow modern portfolio theory, the idea and notion for the optimal portfolio is you'd want to have assets put into that portfolio that are uncorrelated with your current assets. So if you would follow a 60-40 portfolio, equities and bonds, then you want to add some alternatives, maybe some commodities, you add Bitcoin because it's a diversification, right? Its correlation is, so it's a good it's good to diversify your portfolio. And if you're an investor now who's been told, okay, well, Bitcoin can help you, it can perform in periods of crisis, geopolitical uncertainty, inflation, and it's moving just like equities, but potentially higher beta. So higher moves and lower moves, more volatile. It's kind of like it doesn't really fit within that narrative, a strong narrative to hold. But yeah, I mean, it's look, to be honest, also the correlation metric itself is also volatile, right?
Yeah.
And, sometimes it gets correlated with equity, sometimes it doesn't. Increasingly now, it seems like it's only correlated when equity crashes. It's like it's bad, like Bitcoin crashes, and it's correlated, and then when it's rallying, it doesn't catch the rally.
Yeah. Now, would you say that this kind of Bitcoin decoupling from gold is that a bearish thing necessarily?
I wouldn't say it's a bearish thing necessarily. I would just say kind of slowly invalidating the notion that Bitcoin is what it has always wanted, what it was always positioned to be, right? An alternative asset. It's just it's becoming more of a more leveraged bet on risk assets in general, right? So, and then that's how it's performing. And the whole notion that people are thinking, okay, well, additional liquidity coming from the Fed, that's good for risk assets. So if your notion is, okay, Bitcoin's going to rally and there is with more liquidity, then you're thinking it's a risk on assets. So that's just the way it is, right? Yeah, and then that's with regards to Bitcoin and gold decoupling, which isn't great. Another thing that isn't really great is, according to also in this article with CoinDesk, which I want to highlight, is the Bitcoin's market value to realized value, MVRV ratio. It's been falling over the past few months, and I pulled this from Glassnode, but it's been falling over the past few months, as you can see, but I don't have it here, but they've also got, it's fallen below its 365-day moving average, which Crypto Quant says is a bearish indicator, at least from an on-chain perspective. And the market value to realized value, guys, is basically a measure of the price of Bitcoin relative to how much it, the price it was at it last moved, right? So basically a measure of kind of like we think about price to earnings, or like price to book and an equity component. the price of Bitcoin relative to how much it cost when it last moved. So it's been falling. Although we have another chart here that shows, there's been other times in bull and bear cycles, and where the MVRV has fallen when we've been in a bull cycle. So I wouldn't say that it's necessarily that alarming, but
maybe it's just all of a piece with Rectember.
Rectember, yeah, exactly.
We are only just halfway through.
Only halfway, man.
Yeah. Or, well, maybe it's a bit more glass half full. Hey, we're halfway through Rectember. October is only 2 weeks away.
Yeah, man.
Okay. All right. Let's move on to the next story then. This was the big event of last week, if you like. There's no getting away from it. Crypto and politics. It was the big presidential face-off between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump.
Did you watch it?
I did not watch it. No, I watched a few bits on I watched a few clips on Twitter and elsewhere. It was, it didn't make for great watch. I mean, these presidential debates never do. I think whichever side, or if any side you come down on, they never make for great watching. But this one, the consensus is that Harris
it
went
seems
off with it.
The political punditry has crowned her, anointed her the winner, which is kind of fair, at least from most metrics.
She seemed to manage to get under his skin and kind of wind him up a lot.
Potentially the goal. She hit the talking points, apparently. So,
but of course, Kamala Harris said to have won the debate. Something that didn't win the debate or didn't even feature really was crypto.
No, it didn't win, unfortunately. No mention. No, obviously, I guess potentially the crypto industry thought it was a bigger deal. Crypto was a bigger deal in American politics than it actually is. But to be fair, guys, there's so many political issues to be worried about in the US right now that crypto is just not featuring. So it didn't feature in the debate. However, there were a few words that featured in the debate, and words that were bet on. Obviously, you guys know that, Polymarket has markets for what is being mentioned within a political debate.
Yeah.
And some guy had bet on cat, eating, and dogs. And obviously, and Springfield, I think, potentially, which is the town. And obviously, if you most people will know what happened was there was the allegation of pets being eaten.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
that seemed to be one of the big talking points that came out of it. So this person had, bet on Polymarket that these words would be mentioned, and sure enough, they were. And
they won.
Wow.
And there were other odds as well. There was odds on a handshake, and that was
that
one.
Happened.
It just showcases the importance of these decentralized prediction markets they can throw up, and bet on it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've got to be honest with you. I wasn't at all surprised that crypto wasn't mentioned. In fact, I'll frame it another way. I would have been pretty shocked if crypto had made it in there, because obviously there are a lot bigger issues. But I think my takeout from this was that, and I've said this before, like regardless of who wins the presidential race, regardless of who ends up in the White House, I think from crypto's point of view, what is really important is who ends up winning the House and the Senate, who ends up with the majority in the House and the Senate. Because for one thing, I think, for a start, whoever's president, I think will have more on their plate, so much on their plate to deal with that crypto probably won't figure at any point. So it'll fall to other people in their party to advance that agenda. And of course, in order to get crypto legislation passed before it comes onto the president's desk for signing or vetoing or whatever, it has to go through both houses.
Yeah.
And if either or, if one of those houses or both of those houses is controlled by, a majority who are hostile to crypto, then it doesn't matter who's in the White House. It doesn't matter what the policy coming down from on high.
It's really interesting you mentioned that, because, obviously the marginal races for the Senate and House races are important for the legislation. And it's actually something that about a month ago when I did the interview with Arthur Hayes, and he had a blog post that came out just before and I talked to him about it. And it was, the crypto industry will do best to fund those marginal races where on the left and the right, where they'll have pro-crypto politicians who can help get the legislation through, because it's not the top of the ticket that can help push through the legislation, right? And there are some of them now funding, like John Deaton in Massachusetts against Elizabeth Warren and a few others. They're trying to get Sherrod Brown out in Ohio, apparently, who's anti-crypto. So those are the races which I think are going to be the most impactful from the perspective of crypto legislation.
Yeah. Right? And Fairshake is the second most well-funded PAC of the lot. I think that's incredible. I mean, here we are saying, well, crypto, there are bigger issues than crypto, but it's certainly well-funded. on Capitol Hill. That's for sure.
Well, yeah,
So
because you got a lot to lose.
Yep,
if you get the wrong person in place. If Elizabeth Warren is the cryptocurrencies are, then
yeah,
you got to bet the house on that one.
Yeah.
But speaking of, and then in terms of the potential, there was also 2 price predictions that were created by research firms about the election results, right? And so there was 2. One was Bernstein, and they said that if Trump wins, we could see a 90K Bitcoin.
Okay.
And if Kamala wins, we could see a 30K Bitcoin.
Wow.
That's a pretty big spread.
A 60K spread.
60K spread.
I'd love to see big arbitrage.
I'd love to see the analysis that went into that calculation, the inputs for that model.
That's pretty wild.
It's pretty wild. I personally, I think that the 30K call is a bit. I personally think that irrespective of who wins, Bitcoin will rally because they're both going to be incredibly thrift when it comes to spending from a perspective of deficit spending.
Yeah.
That's obviously good for risk assets, fiscal stimulus. So that's it. But then we do have another price prediction from our friends over at Standard Chartered who seem to throw these things out. Throw these things out like candy.
Never knowingly underbid when it comes to a Bitcoin price prediction. What absolutely fantastic figure have they gone for here? So, yes, there it is on screen. Bitcoin could hit 125K by year end if Trump becomes president, 75K if Harris triumphs. So 50K spread there.
Yeah, I think it's more reasonable. I would put Trump at 125K by the end of the year. That's pretty punchy.
That I think is a bit.
Yeah, but Harris, 75K. I don't know about 75K, but I do know that. Look, to be honest, let's say Q1 and something, both Bitcoin will be up irrespective of who wins. But in terms of Standard Chartered's predictions, there, I think it's quite ambitious.
Yeah.
And I don't know if I recall, maybe it's even down on their previous prediction at the beginning of the year when they had 200 something. They had 250K.
Standard Chartered have made some absolutely massive predictions. Some of them, I think some of them they get away with sort of saying, well, by 2030. By
2050 with a 2.1 million Bitcoin or something like 2050. Okay, cool, bro.
Yeah.
No one's going to be around to actually your grandpa's going to be going like that back in that day when Van Eck told me.
2050, no one in crypto is going to live that long.
Can you imagine you made a YouTube video that said in 2050 Bitcoin is going to be worth something, and then someone's going to come back in 30 years and comment.
Someone dredges it up.
Exactly. Remind me 30 years, and they come back in the Twitter being like, yo, look at this, man.
Look at this
guy in your old age sitting there looking at your YouTube comments. Someone.
Okay, so I think the result of the election obviously is too close to call.
Yeah,
that it will probably be positive for Bitcoin and crypto more generally because of certainty. At least we'll know.
At least we'll know. Yeah. Exactly. And I know it's hard. I know this is like ambitious to say this, but I don't know if it can really get that much worse than Gary and his crew now.
That's going to be clipped and screenshotted by someone.
Who knows, man? Yeah,
Gary gets made Secretary of the Treasury.
Gary's watching the stream. He's like, hold my beer.
I'll give it a damn good go.
Give it a go. Yeah.
Okay, sticking with crypto and politics, I'm afraid it's got to be done. So, fresh from yet another attempt on his life. This is absolutely mad. Donald Trump, someone else had a pop at Donald Trump yesterday. Fortunately, he's okay. But this is going to be a big day. I don't know if what happened yesterday is going to affect this today, but supposedly today, Donald Trump is due to launch his DeFi platform.
World Liberty Financial, yes.
Yeah.
Today is the launch day. Crazy. What do you think about this?
I think it's an odd thing to be doing. I think I feel that what with campaigning and because Trump has really been out there. He's done so many media appearances and stuff, and that I think is probably the right thing to do if he wants to become president. So it seems a little odd to be sort of switching focus a bit with this. I know this is largely in the hands of, I think, Eric Trump and Barron Trump.
Barron is involved, quite involved.
Who's 18, I gather.
18, yeah.
So
fresh off his experience with help, or apparently fresh off his Martin Shkreli helping with that meme coin crap.
So, I don't know what Barron Trump or Eric Trump or any of the other guys behind it know particularly about crypto or DeFi, but anyway, this is going ahead. There's a quote here: a reported white paper said the project will allow users to store money in a digital wallet, offer a credit account system, borrow or lend cash to others, and use tokens to invest in assets like crypto. And here's the important bit: a non-transferable governance token has also been mentioned as part of the platform.
Yeah, I mean it's really interesting. I guess so. There's many perspectives to this. Obviously, I think it is a bit of a distraction. I think that there's more important things to focus on from at least generally, but also in a crypto perspective, right? There's just some solid regulation. No one really needs this. It is a distraction from the campaign. If you really wanted to do this, they should do it afterwards. It's a Aave fork of a project that used to be called, or the earlier version of this project was called Doe Finance, which was hacked. I believe
Was that dough as in bread dough or dough as in dough?
probably both, but I think it's dough. A good one. But it is dough, like bread dough, and it was an Aave fork. Yeah, apparently the similar people. Apparently, I heard this in a podcast that some of the same people who were involved in the previous one are involved here, but. From the perspective of a DeFi protocol, look, at least it's not I don't know if I wouldn't call it necessarily a cash grab because it's going to be utilized in DeFi, activities to try and generate yield, and it's rather that than like just a meme coin that buy this right now and you can make X amount of returns and it dumps and you just extract value. It seems like there is a slight attempt here at actually making a reasonable project within DeFi. And just, I think yesterday, the founder of, what was the Ethereum layer 2 Cross was an Ethereum layer 2 the Scroll. So Scroll is a pretty popular Ethereum layer 2 that one of the founders is now apparently tweeted by the World Libby Financial involved in this. I think that it's definitely going to gather TVL. It's definitely possible to gather TVL. Now, how they'll be generating this yield, I don't know if it's been disclosed. My assumption is it could be something kind of like a vault strategy, DeFi vault strategy, where similar to what went on with Yearn Finance, leveraging up the yield potentially, which is risky, obviously. But we'll also not forget that Wonderland, which last year was a fork of Olympus DAO from Avalanche, and this amassed almost $2 billion in TVL.
Wow.
And it was like, and they subsequently found out that one of the founders was involved in Quadriga CX. But the point of the matter is, like, degens will go where there's yield, and if there's a lot of yield, they don't mind. And in this case, I guess, would you trust in a non-developer or Trump's son who idealistically views DeFi? I wouldn't personally be investing my funds into this, or even Wonderland type of coin, or any sort of leveraged DeFi strategies with some protocol. But I guess it's like, compared to an anon who's going to rug you with a meme coin on Twitter and the next day.
Yeah.
There's more thought going into this.
Yeah, but at least we know who's behind this.
Exactly. But you do, you do make a point, like once it gets hacked by North Korea, there it is. If it does amass $2 billion in TVL, and then it does have a massive rug in terms of liquidity because North Korean hackers hit it, that is a risk.
Yeah. But I think that's one of the sort of troubling things about it as well, is that, not only is it associated with a presidential candidate, but that makes it a target, I think.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
Let's face it, any DeFi protocol that attracts TVL, and as you say, any DeFi protocol that attracts TVL is a target.
Yeah.
But I think
and it was hacked before.
And it's been hacked before.
Yeah.
So I think, I mean, personally, this is one I'm just going to sort of get a big bag of popcorn, put my feet up, and kind of watch from a safe distance, I think, on this.
Yeah, I think I'll pass on that one. But
Certainly, I guess you could argue that it's kind of bullish for crypto in a way, because you can't. This will be the first election cycle where one of the candidates has their own DeFi protocol.
Exactly.
We've come a long way.
We've come a long way.
Come a long way in just 4 years.
We have. And speaking of DeFi, the sector is heating up with the launch last week of CBBTC. Yeah.
So you might remember a few weeks ago, there was all the talk around wrapped Bitcoin, WBTC. This, Bitcoin sort of put in an ERC20 wrapper that can then be taken off and used in DeFi.
Yeah.
And there was some controversy around it because BitGo, which was the original custodian of WBTC, it announced that it was handing over control of the keys to an outfit.
Partnership with a Hong Kong entity called
BitGlobal.
Two of the keys would be held there. One of the main multi-sigs and the second backup key. So essentially, they would effectively have two multi-sigs. Yeah. Of course, a lot of fracas and all that. And then eventually they decided they're going to change that, but it still created enough of the FUD. And then Coinbase released this tweet. aptly timed.
Yes, and Bit Global associated with none other than Justin Sun, one of the most
His Excellency.
His excellent.
His
I
Excellency,
beg forgiveness.
please.
His Excellency Justin Sun, who actually woke up a few days ago and chose violence,
Chose
tweeting
violence.
out against CBBTC.
Yeah, I think it's also worth mentioning, guys, that CBBTC, although they aptly timed their tweet at around the FUD of WBTC to about a month ago, it has been in the works for a long period of time, for about a year. And everyone was wondering, this made perfect sense. How long has it taken you? Why is you taking so long? Because Coinbase, it fits so well. They custodian pros. They custody like billions and billions of Bitcoin, right? From the ETFs to everything. They obviously, within the other business parts of the model, they got the base layer 2. And they can easily issue the mints and the redeems. So from an infrastructure perspective, this makes perfect sense for Coinbase to go into. It's going to obviously create a lot more utility for Bitcoin that's held within Coinbase in a centralized way to utilize it within DeFi.
It opens up the potential for a lot of liquidity to find its way into DeFi.
Exactly, and a lot more interest within DeFi in general. And within despite Coinbase, yes, it's centralized, yes, and all this kind of stuff. It is trusted. It's like listed, and I know there was, Justin Sun he had that tweet which just had up, which we can put up again. Basically, some of the issues he raised, this is true. Like, no audits. Well, to be honest, there is audits. It's Deloitte, right? So it's not like proof of reserve audits, but Deloitte is an auditing firm. Like, you can't. It's a listed company. It's just that should be as good as anything, right? Unless you don't believe Deloitte is cooking the books, which is a much bigger problem than in general. But he does have a good point around being seized or frozen. So CBBTC, unlike WBBTC or WBTC, can be frozen on the blockchain. But similar to USDC and USDT have these functions, right?
Yeah.
So
you were saying earlier, we were talking about this, and apparently it's very, actually, although the likes of Tether, Circle, and now Coinbase can freeze these assets, actually getting them frozen is not straightforward.
Well, think about it. Like, think about the steps that have to be taken. And, for every one person who says he was hacked by somebody, there's someone else who's behind that wallet. What's to stop someone just frivolously saying this was stolen, or that's that's been stolen or whatnot? You need to go through a lengthy process, and then there's a challenge period, and then it could involve lawyers, could not, and Tether's got their own requirements. So it's a very involved process to do it.
Yeah.
So I think that the chances of your Bitcoin being frozen by Coinbase because of just them deciding to arbitrarily do it, compared to you actually doing something dodgy with the Bitcoin, is.
I mean, look, I guess, the ability to freeze the asset is contrary to the spirit of Bitcoin. I don't think many people would disagree with that. But if you're going to hold your Bitcoin on Coinbase and then change it into this wrapped product that you can then go off and use on DeFi, you've already given up that aspect of control.
To be fair, I think when it's a public asset that's traded on DEXs and whatnot, you may not have never done anything with Coinbase. So if it's CBBTC is fully traded on a DEX, you could be someone who's never had a Coinbase account and bought it for millions, and then you could have done some DeFi activities, and then Coinbase decides to freeze that account, right?
Yeah,
because they discover you have an Iranian passport. That's a possibility.
Yeah,
it's totally a possibility, and you could be caught up in a dragnet. So that's why it's like, but that's just something you'd know if you have an Iranian passport. Be careful, right? Or someone who's in a sort of like a sanctioned area, right? There's a risk of these certain things. But if you within a country that isn't sanctioned and you are doing perfectly legitimate DeFi activities, I don't think there should be worry here.
Yeah. Well, let's see. And as you say, this is sort of all part of Coinbase sort of building out this ever-growing ecosystem.
Massive, yeah. And as it continues to grow, it synergizes so well with other part of business opportunities.
Yeah. So yeah, a lot of, and as I said, a lot of liquidity likely going to find its way into DeFi. And I mean, this is probably, I think you were saying this when we were discussing this a few weeks ago. I mean, this is probably going to be bigger in the long run than WBTC.
Yeah, definitely. I think so. Yeah. It's, if not in the next year, if it really starts ticking up, because like I say, everyone was wondering, this just makes so much sense. Do it, right? And also the mints and redeems of them biased, it's like it would probably cost virtually nothing, and it's so easy for Coinbase to do it, very quick. It's got the infrastructure to do it. So, yeah.
No wonder Justin Sun isn't a fan. And just sort of on other sort of related news, I thought it's worth mentioning as well that PayPal and Venmo are going to add support for ENS names.
Yeah, that's cool. PayPal's diving into crypto big time, man.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I was looking earlier, PYUSD, PayPal's stablecoin, is now comfortably a top 100 asset by market cap. It did actually reach $1 billion market cap fairly recently and then took a bit of a tumble. But I mean, this is growing.
It's growing, and they add in so many features. So for one, they basically, in terms of speed, they've expanded to different networks. You see this, it's expanded to Solana, where Solana is actually almost overtaking ETH in terms of PYUSD stable transfers.
Yeah.
They've also added this confidential transfers feature.
Right.
So it's interesting. It's like you can, if you're a merchant and you're receiving PYUSD, this chart basically is the transfer volumes. That's really interesting itself in terms of it's just another show of how much ETH is just like being eaten by Solana. But this confidential transactions essentially will allow merchants to, such that it's not public how much they're receiving from customers. Obviously, it's going to be able. PayPal will have the ability from a regulatory perspective to still identify the transactions and the merchants and whatnot. But it's good because obviously you don't necessarily want, if you're a merchant that's doing big business, it's financial information put on chain. You don't want everyone to know that necessarily.
Yeah, you don't have to be doing something illicit. You can just want your financial information to be kept private.
And I think that generally there's just better stablecoin regulations could potentially be passed with the stablecoin bill coming soon. So that's there's a lot of hype around that. Even the likes of Schumer and them are behind it. So stablecoins are going to keep rallying. I mean, stablecoins are going to continue to be growing, and PayPal's diving in, and I mean DeFi, and they are driving they will help continue driving DeFi.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Growth all around. Speaking of growth, okay, so that is those are the big stories that we wanted to cover in the news. Second part of the show, it's time for top gainers, top tweets, some of your feedback, dates for your diary, etc., etc. So last week's top gaining cryptos were Nervos Network, CKB, Popcat on Sol, Sui, again, second consecutive week as a top gainer for Sui, Mantra, and Artificial Superintelligence Alliance. So, starting with Nervos Network, this is a pretty easy one to explain. Spot listing on Upbit.
Korean degens at it again.
Yeah, Korean degens pumping the bags of everyone who holds CKB. Do you remember we covered Nervos Network years ago? I'm talking maybe like 2020 here.
We were talking about this earlier. Did you go back and check?
I'm pretty sure we did.
Okay, I can't remember. That's just
a long time ago.
A long ass time ago.
Yeah.
What did you watch? We need to watch the video.
I didn't. I sort of remembered just before we came on, and we did cover it, but I can't remember whether we were bullish or not. What about
Popcat? So Kraken announced it will be listing Popcat on Thursday. So obviously
this coming Thursday.
So sex listing is always good for meme coins. And then there's also the hype around Catizen, which is another one of these Telegram, games and tap to earn that obviously people just go crazy about. They can like dogs. We had the Lost Dogs, and we had all these other ones, not coin. So then it could just be company because it's a cat themed coins in general. The feline adjacent, the feline meta is picking up in the meme coin space, kind of like that movie Cats versus Dogs, where they're like, so the feline coins will jump in again.
Yeah, we're back to cats.
Yeah,
cats are sort of crypto spirit animal, it seems. Do you think
discuss cats?
Like I see,
like they don't give a shit about you as a person.
They're just out for themselves.
Just out for themselves. Like, who are you? They're sociopath.
I suppose. I was more thinking like, there seem to be like so many crypto people, so many of the traders that I see on crypto Twitter and elsewhere, they seem to have cats.
They're very catty.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I think more so than dog. But there was this meta, wasn't there? The sort of meme coin meta shifted from dogs, obviously, which it was for a long time, and then we had a sort of frog interlude, and then it went, and then everyone was like, "Oh, it's going to cats now," and I sort of thought, "Nah, that's too simplistic. It can't." And sure enough, we had cat coins, and the cat meta still seems to be fairly strong.
Still very strong, man. Yeah.
Yeah. There we are, long and involved discussion about cats. Okay, moving on. Our next big performer, one of the top performers from last week, was again Sui.
Sweet.
SUI, as some people have it. Now, obviously, SUI got its own Grayscale trust about a month ago, but that's probably the pump from that has probably evaporated. But this latest pump seems to be more about ecosystem growth. There are a lot of projects building on SUI at the moment, it would seem. Also, some upcoming events. They were at, I think they figured pretty big at Korea Blockchain Week, which was a couple of weeks ago. They've also got events coming up in Singapore and the USA. We'll talk about that in a minute. And other metrics like TVL and daily active addresses are both rising for SUI. So there's a lot happening on that network.
There's a lot happening from the network. And, also we did a video about this a month ago. So go back and take a look at that as well. There was also a lot of DeFi borrowing going on with whales, utilizing, leveraging on SUI. We also did a newsletter piece this weekend.
Our newsletter piece went out yesterday. Kevin, one of our GigaBrain researchers here, did a really good bit on SUI there, kind of explaining why it was pumping so much and all the stuff going on. Mentioned a few interesting projects building in SUI's ecosystem. So you can find back copies of our newsletter on our website, can't you?
Yeah, back copies, exactly. And you can subscribe. We've got the links down below. Every Sunday, top alpha in that newsletter.
Yeah, you're missing out if you're not subscribed. Okay, what's
another
next?
coin was Mantra OM, and this is an RWA platform. So it could potentially be benefiting from excitement around worldly financial potentially. And I think that, it's another one of these RWA plays, right?
RWAs are kind of, getting a lot of mind share at the moment. I checked on their Twitter as well. They're also kind of leaning fairly heavily into Token 2049. So it looks like they might have a fairly big presence there. Yeah,
they've been also, they seem to have a lot of money in terms of ecosystem development and building. I've seen them been sponsoring a lot of places as well.
I'm going to set you a challenge actually, because I noticed on their Twitter that they were going with some Mantra branded socks, some pink socks. I want you
my special quest, not to do business, not to go and attend talks, and not to go and listen to what's building in the crypto ecosystem, but to go and get you Mantra socks.
I want some pink Mantra socks. Think of it as a side quest.
Okay, my side quest, pink Mantra socks. Noted.
We're going to talk about Nick's upcoming visit to Token 2049 in just a moment. But before that, the other big performer of last week was Artificial Superintelligence Alliance, or FET. Now, there's a proposal out at the moment for Kudos, which is a decentralized cloud computing platform, to become the fourth member of the alliance, which would obviously give the project a sort of extra angle, as it were. The community is going to vote on that, and that voting period starts on Thursday. So there could be some hype for FET ahead of that. I mean, I would imagine that will probably pass. That seems like a no-brainer, but perhaps not. As also an Ethereum Cardano bridge has been opened, so FET can now be bridged between Ethereum and Cardano. I doubt that's having much of an effect on the price, but worth mentioning.
Don't think so. No, yeah.
Okay, so that is the big gainers from last week. Congratulations to all of them. I think Mantra as well. I think it's pronounced because like a mantra, a yoga mantra.
Interesting. Really?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
All these little Easter eggs. That's
the research we go into for these guys.
We go deep.
The phonetics behind the words.
Yeah, exactly. Worth watching the stream for alone.
Yeah.
Before we talk about tweets of the week, should we talk about your visit to Singapore?
Well, yes. Well, this is the date for the diary. There's a few things, obviously, because this week's is the date for this. A lot of stuff happening, as I mentioned at the top of the stream. There's obviously the pivot, but before the pivot, starting off at about 9 a.m. Singapore time on Wednesday, is going to be Token 2049. So it's the preeminent event in crypto. I think it's the biggest crypto event in the calendar year. Obviously, the Bitcoin conference is big, but in terms of that's just Bitcoin. This is for all crypto. And I've been to other crypto events. Token 2049 in Singapore is the biggest. And if you're on any sort of crypto Twitter, you will see the amount of hype that's been built up around it right now. I will be there as well. That starts on Wednesday. I'll be there as well with we got a new very important hire as well. You guys will meet there for sure. It's Raheem. He's joined us from an exchange, and he's on the BD side. We want to look to work with a lot of partners and other creators and exchanges and all that and projects. But we'll be there we'll be Wednesday and Thursday and Friday. So that's on the Wednesday morning. Token 2049 kicks off, and then in the evening, obviously D-Day for the Fed, right? So that's going to be Wednesday, where we'll know what the Fed is going to be made, what decision is taken with rates.
Wednesday could be big.
And Wednesday is going to be big for crypto in general. Thursday, initial jobless claims. It's an important economic data point, but it's coming after the pivot. So it's like, it's not going to have much of an impact. And then Friday, it's adjacent to token 2049, is breakpoint, baby. 2 days of breakpoint.
Solana breakpoint.
Yeah.
That's Singapore as well, right?
Singapore as well, around Singapore. Yeah. So that's going to be crazy.
Are you going to go and check it out?
I may go and check it out. Yeah, why not? If I'm still alive by that stage.
Yeah. Did you see that video of that girl running around that Solana house?
No.
Oh, it was wild. Yeah, there was a girl sort of doing a sort of breakneck speed tour of a Solana sort of hacker house or something. Yeah. Absolutely mad.
And massive Solana. And remember what happened. This is important because, one, there's going to be lots of announcement for potentially maybe the first release of FireDancer, a very important tech upgrade for Solana. And if you recall last year, the breakpoint marked the start of the Sol rally because of all the excitement around Solana. And this is going to be a big one. So that's happening on Friday. So those are two important dates for your diary. Those are some important dates for this week for your diary. Yeah.
So if you guys, if any of you guys are going to Token 2049, please do keep a lookout for Nick and Raheem.
I'll be wearing my name tag.
They'll be wearing these badges. I mean, you know what Nick looks like. So track
I don't know.
down.
They may think I'm an AI. They may think you created an AI of some description.
Maybe
they
might just think
you created the two blonde versions, Nick and Jess, and then the Jess one's swapped it out. No.
They might just think that a Viking has got into the convention center and has been let on the loose, unchallenged by security. So if you see a Viking wandering around with a Coin Bureau badge on, stop and say hello. He's very friendly in real life, and remind him about those mantra socks. Tell him don't bother to come back if he hasn't got those pink mantra socks. He might even, Nicky Bagato, he might even give you his badge. Who knows?
For the very special fan, the one who heaps the most praise.
You never know.
Yeah.
One last question regarding Token 2049, Nick. How disappointed are you on a scale of 1 to 10 that you weren't on that chartered Qatar Airways flight?
Oh man,
yesterday.
I was absolutely mortified. There's nothing I love more than karaoke on a 7-hour flight, man.
I don't know if you guys have seen this. It's all over crypto Twitter at the moment. Some project chartered a Qatar Airways flight, flew a load of developers, degens, KOLs, assorted riffraff over.
Massive, wide body jet of all people. And it seemed like a massive party. Look, I mean, people can have fun. I don't know if I want to on a 7-hour flight. It's cool to have fun a little bit of time, but Token 2049 is going to be a big party. People are going to party the whole time there. On the way there, it's like the only thing I can think of that was like when 2-hour flight when I flew to Ibiza on Ryanair. And that was 2 hours of like, I can't take this. Nothing. 7 hours.
Wow. Stansted to Ibiza. That is a
challenge.
Flight.
That was a challenge.
Yeah,
man.
But closely followed by Dubai to Singapore for Token 2049. So it's going to be an interesting week. And I'll miss it. I really enjoyed Token 2049 last year, but I mean, I'm already exhausted just reading about it and following it. So I'm glad you're taking the hit.
Yeah, I mean, these things also, like some of these dinners start at like 10, 11 p.m. And then,
10 p.m.?
10 p.m. No, not 8, 10 p.m. I'm like, okay, crazy. It's going to be a crazy one. I need to get as much energy as possible.
Absolutely.
Where's the snack? Where's the C4?
Oh yeah, you need plenty of energy drink. Yeah. We'll send you on. I'll send you on your way with a crate of whatever energy drinks in the fridge. All right, tweets of the week as promised. There are just 3 tweets of the week this week. So let's have a look at the. Yes, we might as well pump my own tweet.
Well, the crypto bros are back in town. We needed to rep them, man. They just came off their ayahuasca. They passed from the ayahuasca.
I think they did Burning Man, didn't they?
They did Burning Man, ayahuasca. They were enlightened, and then they decided they'd come back and they'd bought a Lambo.
Yeah,
they've been whipping around Dubai with a Lambo.
Yeah, those 2 idiots. So keep a lookout for them. They've been making more content around Dubai, the crypto bros. So they'll be back soon. Which is reason enough to run for the hills if ever there was one. Okay, so that's the Crypto Bros. Next up, we have this one from. This is great. I love this. So, crypto Twitter flying 20 hours to Singapore so they can stand around at events like this.
Yeah, it's that typical meme with this, like, you're at the party, they're like at the, I don't know, marquee nightclub, and then everyone's dancing and you're standing there in the corner with your drink. It's like, they don't know I'm building the next multi-million DeFi project. They don't know that the move-based blockchains are going to
They don't know that I work for Sui. That is some crypto folks summed up. Delightful. And the final tweet of the week was this one from Look On Chain. James Fickle lost 18,000 ETH by going long the BTC ETH trading pair. I should point out here, there's actually a typo there. It's ETH BTC.
Yeah, ETH BTC.
So they basically longed ETH against BTC. They effed around and they found out.
They effed around, yeah. And the worst thing about this is if you're doing, first of all, he used leverage. I mean, big leverage. And then also it's all on chain. So you can't really hide your losses. Not like a lot of, trader lobs who basically do they'll go and use demo accounts, or they'll go and delete their tweets, or they can. Yeah, it's like everyone's watching. They can see when you get in the liquidation. You can't hide it. They can see your size. But given the size this guy's doing, I mean, I'm pretty certain this is probably chump change for him. I don't know. I mean, I wouldn't, taking such a large leverage bet on chain.
Part of me, I'm split here. Part of me hopes it's chump change for him, and he's not been absolutely wrecked. And part of me hopes it isn't, and he's learned a valuable lesson. Not to be such an utter degenerate. But we'll see. Yeah, only in crypto.
Not to be so fickle.
Yeah, what a wild. So that's Tweets of the Week, and we have just got a few minutes left to go through some of your comments from the stream. So thank you, everyone, firstly, for watching. Thank you to everyone who commented. We have some interesting ones here today. I'm going to fire a couple at you, Nick. This one from Cass Hugavin. So 25 or 50, hit me.
And that's a
I
hot
presume
one.
this is
On the
basis
spot
points
there, man. I don't know, man. I mean, at first I was thinking 25, and now I'm thinking it's 50. I mean, I may regret this, but I think Jerome will ease into it.
25.
25.
Okay, negative Nelly there.
I mean, I think he'll ease into it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Let's see if Nick is proved right. Then
don't trade non-financial advice.
Non-financial
advice. I'm like,
do not trade Nick. Okay. A few other comments here, just a few ones to deal with. Guy is part of the WEF. Yeah. Absolutely slanderous.
Taking his direct marching orders from Klaus Schwab.
Yeah, yes, from Klaus. I'm one of the young global leaders. No, I'm a global shaper.
You're a global shaper. Young global shaper. You shape the globe.
I shape the globe. The globe is but putty in my hands.
Yes.
Yeah,
YouTube is your tool to infect the masses.
This is all a WEF agenda, guys. Congratulations for sitting through 45
Agenda 2030, whatever the UN Agenda 2030.
Yeah. Dre 5110 says, well, he does seem to know a lot about them. Yep. Busted. Deepu Kumar, who's been he's been commenting a lot throughout this stream. Not all of it great. Guy is best friend of SBF. Look, just because he's living under my t-shirt doesn't mean that you can throw slander like that around, Deepu. Isaacs says, when crypto gets mass adoption, Coin Bureau will be the main news outlet. We'll be the only one still standing.
We'll be keeping going no matter what, no matter what.
Yeah.
Bull or bear, we're here all the time, baby.
Yeah. The gynecology one has come up again. That seems to have been a popular pun. Now Juraj Kirin is asking one of the big questions here. Who would you rather have as a neighbor, Gary Gensler or Gerbir Graywall, if you have to choose? So Gerbir Graywall is the enforcement dude at the SEC. So I mean, talk about a rock and a hard place.
Yeah, I mean, it depends if he's. Well, I mean, the question here is like, well, okay, to be honest, it's like, who are they individuals? And we have to make a judgment about them as individuals, as potential neighbors, just based on what they've said, what they say, or what they look like, how they talk. I don't know. So you're asking us to make a very, that's a tough one.
I'm going to make a snap judgment here and say that Gary Gensler will surprise us all, and he'll actually play loud trap music into the small hours and have loud sort of parties and all that.
I'm going to take another slant to this question, and I'm going to answer it from another angle. Gary Gensler, I know he's loaded because he used to work in banking, investment banking, he's Goldman and all that. So he's probably living in a very expensive neighborhood. So I would prefer to live in a very expensive neighborhood. Not saying you're poor, Guba. I'm not saying you're poor. I'm just saying that by sheer, notion of that I'd prefer to live in a nicer neighborhood. That
is a gigabrained answer.
Yeah.
Okay, Deepu back with another question. Rather than slandering me about SBF, he also asked, Guy, can inflation bounce back? Is there any possibility? There certainly is the possibility. As we saw, as Nick mentioned at the top of the stream, core inflation was still sticky. That was mostly related to housing. Services-related inflation has been sort of reliably coming down. But look, I mean, we've talked about this on some of our NFA live streams as well. the Fed will be very aware that, during the 1970s, inflation sort of shot up. They thought they'd got it under control and it came roaring back. And I think this is just an important point to flag up as well. We're talking about rate cuts here. We're currently, around 5.25%. So we might go down to 5, we might go just below 5. We're going to get another couple this year. But I mean, all that said, 2025, we're going to start 2025 with rates around about 4%, interest rates around about 4% in the USA. Now, given the fact that, during the last crypto bull market, they were basically zero and had been zero for as good as zero for quite a long time, I think this is something to bear in mind. And I think this will inform the Fed's thinking as well. They don't want inflation to come back. So it means that although rates are going to get cut, the question is, how low are they going to cut them? Are they going to take them back all the way back down to zero again?
Well, inflation is still above the target rate, right? And they've taken a bit of a risk to start cutting with inflation still above the target rate. And I will remind you, there have been periods in the past where the Fed has eased too early, too quickly, and inflation has come back roaring. And when it comes back, it's even worse because it's therefore expectations are shot as well. I think this is part of the 70s when one of the federal bank. So that's something that they've always had to worry about is inflation can come back when it does come back. If it's not tramped down properly, it comes back, and then then you need to go much more. Then you really got to crash the economy. So yeah, I think it's possible. They seem to the soft landing seems in on the radar, but don't want to go too quickly.
Yeah. So yeah, in short, inflation could well come back, but I think the Fed is going to be well aware of that, and that will be something that's always a concern in the background. Okay, another question comes from Annie. Now that ETH has broken against BTC, could this mean ETH and altcoins will struggle possibly until late this year?
I think it is possible. I think that there is right now uncertainty. Altcoins is driven about on the macro perspective, and you can look at the technical side in terms of like chart levels and whatnot. But right now, what's holding back altcoins is regulatory clarity. Like we said, I think that we need to see what's going to happen with regards to policy post November, right? Because altcoins, especially in DeFi sector, all these things, the crypto industry in general, is impacted by that. In the short term, until November, yes, I think Bitcoin dominance is going to continue climbing. But the altcoin season will reverse that if we do get clearer guidance with the more positive crypto regulations towards the end of the year.
Yeah. Okay, the big question of the day comes from Paris. Bro, what's Nick's hair care routine?
Oh, it's too rigorous, man. I'm going to have to do a video on that. It requires in-depth analysis.
Separate live stream.
It's way too involved, man. I wish I could give you the quick, but it would not be doing it justice. I'm just sorry.
Yeah,
I got to do a cheat sheet on that.
we haven't got that long, but if you want CoinBureau to pivot into a hair care channel,
hey man, we've always got some opportunity. Bear market, we could do workout guides and hair care routines, and
yeah. Okay, hey guys, you're not coming to Singapore? Yes, Vincent. Well, I'm not, but Nick and Raheem, our new colleague, are. So keep a lookout for them, as I say. Yeah. A good question from John Legend. I presume this is the John Legend.
He's the John Legend.
I've no reason to suspect that it isn't.
Man.
Yeah. Will Sol maintain popularity after meme season ends? This is a good question.
It is a good question because a lot of the excitement earlier, at least in March and everything, was driven by meme coin activity, and a lot of the activity on Solana was driven by meme coins. But I think it will, because I think from a UX perspective, it doesn't necessarily just because it's meme coins. From a UX perspective, onboarding and building on Solana, it seems like now in terms of developers, many people are choosing to build on Solana.
Yeah.
Right? You go to these events, you'll see all the excitement from project teams to want to build on Solana. The UX is a lot faster and quicker and effective. It's UX from not just you sending and swapping, but also onboarding through the likes of Phantom and everything. So, it's going to pick up in other formats, right? In terms of whether it could be like DeFi lending or other sorts of activities.
DeFi on Solana does definitely seem to be, a growing sector. I think Deepin on Solana as well.
Also RWAs. I've seen, I think recently, Solana got involved with it, and some project was issuing RWAs on Solana. So, and obviously stablecoins now, a lot of stablecoins have been issued on Solana. So yeah, I think that it will continue after meme season ends.
Yeah. And I think it will be the better for it, actually. I think that will be that, it'll be a good thing to see that Solana isn't just a chain for meme coins.
Yeah. Now John Legend's going to go launch his
does a song about Solana.
Yeah.
James Lowe asks, when's Nia going to get the love it deserves? I mean, I think we've given Nia a bit of love.
Yeah.
I could say I hold Nia, so it's got
so do
it's
I.
got some
So
love
do
from
I.
me. Oh yeah.
And we've done a video like 2 weeks ago. And in that video, there's a lot of exciting things coming up for Nia, right? In terms of like events that could give it a boost. It's going to be a token, obviously. There's the whole abstraction concept is amazing. Obviously, there's going to be this redacted conference, and that's coming in Thailand, which is an abstraction-based conference. I would, though, their recent Twitter antics and their whole
the sort of the thing was hacked.
Look, I mean, it's they got viral. It went viral. I just don't know. I've seen different takes from it. But it is what it is. But I mean, I think it's very, very bullish on Take a look at the video and make a judgment for yourself. But in terms of like its goals of abstraction to become the front end for all of crypto, it really has that's an interesting narrative to play for sure.
Yeah, and I think of all the alt layer ones, I think probably Nia is best positioned to capture the AI narrative at the moment. That could change, but that seems to be the narrative that it's chasing, and I think that's a good direction for the project. So there's a bit of love for Nia. I just wanted to. So Nick needs a Viking helmet. That's something else.
Where's my
where is your? Yeah, there was one. And I just want to close on this question as well, because I think this guy's got an absolutely wonderful name, Nicky Bigato. Sounds like he's from New York. Says, "Hey boys, good morning. Hey boys, good morning. Grand to be in the live and good to see you. Thank you for all. You're welcome, Nicky.
Typical.
You're welcome. So thank you everyone for watching. That's it for this week.
Thanks, guys.
Wish Nick, please, a very safe.
Come and say hi.
Yeah, like I say, if you see him at Token 2049 in Singapore, come and say hi. Yeah. Nick, safe journey.
Thanks, man.
Get back in one piece.
I hope to. Yeah.
And good luck. So next week you can tell us all about everything that you saw and everyone that you spoke to.
I'll be bringing your socks. Don't worry. We'll bring this. I'll find the socks and you'll put them on stream.
Yes. No socks, no stream. Just so as you know. So there's a bit of jeopardy. All right. Thanks everyone for watching. Great to see you. See you again soon.
Cheers, guys.
Cheers.
Thanks, team. Excellent.